Play the drums on them, Guru. The Wishful Master. Welcome to another Friday night lecture. Whether it's your first time, you've been doing it for a while. Appreciate the support. Coming in every Friday, get the lessons. Tonight, we're going to get into the releasing ourselves from understanding the differences between emotional projection. Where my remote go? Can't hear myself. All right, cool. Tonight, we're getting into emotional projection versus what vulnerability truly is, being vulnerable, being open. That storyline that you've been writing, the storyline that we've been writing, or the story that we've been getting into, peace, we all in deck. The storyline that you've been writing, the conversation that we've been listening to, the narrative that we've been in that mindset with ourselves, and the difference between the planning and then the prolonging. All based into that emotional, based in aspects of the emotional projection versus us truly becoming vulnerable, us truly becoming open, us truly becoming trusting of ourselves. The difference between emotional projection and vulnerability is accountability. When we are not used to direct, vulnerability is direct. Yeah, vulnerability is direct. Emotional projection is how many times, I'm going to start with a question. How many times have you asked a question, but when you got the answer, because you spoke the question from an identity or from a projected point of your emotion, you couldn't accept the answer? How many times have you? I've done this plenty of times. I remember for myself, and plenty of times I was in the space where when I would have a conversation and then I spent more time trying to make the conversation something that it wasn't, and I didn't understand where the fuck I got that from. Blessing. I didn't understand that, wait, I'm getting the, I might be getting the answer that I'm getting the exact answer that I need to get from that space. I'm getting the exact answer that I need to receive. Why am I not, what's stopping me from receiving it? It's all based on that emotional projection. When you go into a space, you've already told you went into a space, you told yourself a story already before you went into the space. Most of the time, remember, your society is your environment. That's your society. Everything else that replicates from your thought process creates your society, which is your environment. Everything that you attach to, whether it's based on attachment or connection, and then as it flows, as that ripple effect goes out, it creates your environment. That's just your society is what's around you. You have that balance. But if everything in my space, and I thought about this in my healing aspect, I was like, one of the main things that stops us from actually coming in full to our healing and becoming fully open and vulnerable is the emotional projection that we were used to using, and then always used to projecting from an emotional standpoint. That means if I sat here and say bitches ain't shit, and now I'm sitting here saying, yo, I need a queen in my life, but that mindset or that old narrative of bitches ain't shit is still in my mind, or niggas ain't shit is still in my head. No matter what environment that I go into outside of myself, outside of my comfort zone, until I've defined those aspects inside of me, those projection points inside of myself, guess what I'm gonna be doing when I go out? I'm always going to seem to attract the same exact thing. I'm always going to try to build on the same exact thing. I'm never going to be able to accept the space to actually start doing my work and getting what I need to get done. This is one of the biggest things when it comes into the difference between you actually creating a plan, you actually creating that plan, setting that intention, setting yourself up, opening yourself up and being vulnerable. And then you going into a space where you gave yourself this pre-told story of what you're going to expect, what you're expecting if it doesn't happen, because it's based in hoping. I talked about that on Wednesday when I talked about, are you hoping and coping versus affirming and learning. This is a lot of times in ourselves, we're not used to the directness. Affirming and learning is based in the aspect of being direct. That means if I set an affirmation or I set an intention, it's going to be based on a direct content to be open to learn. That means the more that I affirm that I'm great, the more that I affirm that I'm healing, the more that I affirm that I'm love, I'm peace, I'm the dark, the more that I'm affirming this, what I'm going to learn in my space, I'm opening myself up to learn. That's the precursor. Similar, I talked about it on Thursday. Yeah. You put yourself in this position, that's your precursor. Once I say that I'm magical, everything in my space, now I must define what that is. That's just your precursor. Hey. That's my precursor. Once I said I was a god, that was simply my precursor. Once I said I was a king, once I said whatever I said I was a precursor to open myself up to learn. But when we go into this space where I am this, you say I am, then based on an identity, and you're still in this the emotional attachment aspect, you're going to try to maintain the identity of what you brought into that space. There's been so many times where I would go into a space and I would try to maintain what needed to be destroyed. Every space that you're going into, something's going to be destroyed. One of the things I thought about on my walk, when I thought about on my daily walk, I was like, yo, there's a greater reason to always see death on TV and react to it. Why don't I react to certain things? And I looked at now versus then, having a nice recall with myself in my walk. I was like, I've never reacted to certain things the way everybody else reacted to them when it came to the aspects of motherfuckers dying. I never reacted in that way. And then I would realize when I had conversations with people, when I have conversations with my clients, and then they try to bring up these current events or the current, it's because they were still stuck within a certain space. Most of the conversations that you have most of the conversations that you'll have based on you being an emotional attachment only go so far. They only go based on the whatever emotional attachment created that space. So then you spend your entire time you find yourself anchoring and prolonging, trying to stay within maintaining that identity. Everything must go. Everything must be shed. You get stuck in these, because you're used to attachment and we're not used to the actual process of connection. As you naturally connect, you go further, you enhance, you go further, you open up, you become vulnerable in this space. Whatever is coming into that space with you, whatever lesson you have to learn, that's what you took into that space. I started thinking about everything differently. I no longer will sit here and say, I'm tired of narcissists, I'm tired of toxic motherfuckers, I'm tired of this, I'm tired of that, because I realize now that if I practice whether I'm saying it positive or negative, I'm attracting it. The base is only based on the emotional content that go to that. Yes. I went through the whole dating process. I went through the whole dating myself process before I unified, and that's learning how to speak to yourself and dating yourself. Exactly as Johnny does, as you really learn how to talk that conversation with yourself. That conversation changes when you become vulnerable instead of depending on the emotional attachment. When we get stuck in this state of emotional attachment or projecting, even the conversation to yourself is going to come from an aspect of you're going to see yourself projecting. There's a lot of conversations that you've had in your entire life where you're projecting. You'll ask a question, and then the first thing that you're going to say, because you're projecting, remember, projecting is based in emotional projection versus accountability. In that being vulnerable, being open, is when you go into a space and you ask a question, and then you go through the questions, you're asking these questions to get a reaction. Once you don't get the reaction, your emotional, that attachment or that wall starts to fall, then your projection starts to show. The fear starts to show. You can see that in a lot of arguments when you're having with others. You start seeing what was the argument based in the first place? Remember, every time you go into a space, it's going to be two parts going into that space to create the space anyway. It's my masculine and feminine and your masculine and feminine going into that space. Whatever's created in that space is going to be taking characteristics either from the wounded masculine archetype of you, the wounds of your masculine, or the wounds of your feminine are going to connect to the wounds of my masculine and the wounds of my feminine. But if I'm in a space where I've dealt and I've unified with myself, this is the aspect when I'm direct, when I'm just directly, I can just say something and you're not used to that aspect coming into your space, then of course, the conversation that you've created is based through your emotional wounds, the feminine wounds or the masculine wounds. So your conversation is coming through a wounded space. That's the projection point. That's why most people have a conversation, and then immediately after when it starts, that's when you'll start. Because I remember having conversations, and when I wasn't winning, because my inner child wasn't disciplined, when I wasn't winning the conversation, when I wasn't winning the argument, then I would start to shut down, or I would start to divert, or I would start to be really, 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 really cutthroat with my objective. If you have not looked at, and I watched it today, when I watched it today, that shit was amazing to break down. But if you have not watched the conversation between Will and Aunt Viv or Janet, if you have not watched that conversation, go watch that conversation. Go watch that. Go watch that. The breakdown of hearing Will Smith talking about like, yo, I tried to create a world. I tried to create a world that was perfect, and I tried to do everything in that world based on perfection. So I was always trying to gift for acceptance. That shit was, I was like, wow. Because I looked at myself, I was like, yo, a lot of the times in our space, based on emotional attachment, you will find yourself trying to do things that are based on an emotional attachment. Remember, the difference between you being truly vulnerable and being open is being able to learn how to respond. When you're stuck within this when you're stuck in that aptitude of that trauma that you got used to, everything you're doing is based in wishful thinking. That means there's multiple layers on both ends, but there's multiple layers that you're not ready to peel back that created that aspect. Everything that you're wanting to create, everything that you're wanting to come into is going to be based on that emotional attachment. You have to discuss to yourself, you have to get into that discussion. Am I doing this based on emotional attachment? Emotional attachment is based heavily inside of manipulation. Manipulating manipulating that environment to fit that space so you don't have to truly become vulnerable. Because once you become vulnerable, once you become open, once you become truthful, you're going to stop saying all these things. So conflict with her was something he was not ready to handle in a genuine manner at the time because her bold response was challenging that identity. So he wasn't ready for it. In that joint, she was like, he said, one thing that he said, he was like, when she challenged him in a way that he was not used to, his dragon came out. And he said, he was like, whenever I'm always trying to laugh, because laughing, making people laugh, that's a way of people accepting me because I can make them laugh. But the other side of that polarity was, if people were not accepting me for me, or if I cannot accept the way that they were trying to say things to me, that's when I would try to cut them down to their fucking core. He said it would cut them into a way. And he destroyed, they talked about destroying her career. But a lot of times, that's the thing that we keep trying to do inside of our spaces, especially, and then y'all thinking about this Pluto retrograde. We're talking about this Pluto retrograde. It's time for you to really start looking in the state of emotional attachment. I'm going to read it right now as I go to my page. Emotional attachments are based in trying to have control, not being able to let go of dead situations. That means things that no longer can provide any type of nourishment to your growth. Embracing your transformation. That means you got to get out of this space of, I'm never going to have time to do this, and we're going to get deeper into that. Honoring your darkness. That means really dealing with your shadow. Stop sitting there saying, because this happened. No, get out of that. Reclaiming your energy. You've always had it. Checking out your unhealthy obsessions. You are obsessed. I remember being obsessed. Most of us want to be I was obsessed with being right. I was so obsessed with being so right that it led into me being very self-destructive. And what I mean by being self-destructive in this case, and I'm going to build into it, I was so used to being right that when I was in an argument with someone on two different levels, I'm going to give you both because it's both sides on the polarity. Whenever I was losing an argument, based on the multiple wounds, because you're acting in multiple wounds, based on my neglect and my rejection wound, for sometimes in a certain space, when I thought somebody was challenging me or making me feel some type of way, or I really couldn't say anything, and they were reflecting like the wound that was the string that was being hit was like me trying to be something to trying to be accepted by my pops, me trying to be accepted by people. I would immediately, in order to stay right, I would immediately switch and give a state of apology or apologize, but there would be no change behavior. I would apologize to fit the image of within that space. But since it wasn't true, since I wasn't willing to acknowledge my behavior or become vulnerable, I was only projecting. I would then later on, because this is how you will notice, because later on down the line, you go pull that out of the pocket. A lot of us have these conversations just to have more ammunition later on. You want to have a whole conversation and you just sitting there listening like, oh yeah. But then you waiting because now that's your ammunition for your next conversation. You're not learning anything. You're looking for a point to jump in and to react. I remember always trying to be in this space of always trying to be able to react. I was always trying to shoot. I was always trying to be right. I was always trying to be in the position to where, yeah, but I was right, wasn't I? I was so busy on trying to be right, I missed the lesson. There was like 7. I remember going through cycles for like 2 or 3 years of the same fucking relationship, the same fucking friendship, the same damn type of job over and over and over again because I didn't understand the lesson from the first job. I remember being stuck in that. You can be stuck in that situation, and what gives you the energy of the false sense in that space is the anchors that you have mastered. You casted off certain anchors. That's like when somebody said, based on the intellect, your anchors are the intellectual aspects of your emotional attachments. Remember, you defined it. You've been setting it up the entire time. Now, in order for you to break away from it, you have to understand, yo, I did this, this happened. Oh, that's what this meant. You're literally going through your life and going through these processes. And as you're peeling back these layers, you'll understand like, damn, half of the shit I was doing was subsurface level shit, somebody else's shadow. I made a post earlier today breaking down the aspect. One of the aspects is I'm getting more and more in depth with that. And I was like, yo, in 2000 and between 2002 and 2003 and 2004, that's when I went to NYU and I was studying psychology and studied business. I didn't use my business degree and I didn't use my psychology degree because the original reason I went for psychology was like, I really want to understand. I just want to understand my fucking head. The narrative that kept me from tapping into it was on a surface level. It was like black people don't do therapy. So I was like, everybody around me in my old environment, because I was going back to my old, I called myself going back to my old environment to go get everybody to look at me. And I was like mad because nobody was supporting what I said because they kept saying black people don't go to therapy and da. You know, it's hard to do business with people because, you know, and like they were giving me this narrative that I was used to inside of that space. So it deferred me from actually extending myself or challenging myself. I lost myself in the challenge. I lost myself in the space. I was like, nah, man, but yeah, you might be right. And I was, because I wasn't understanding the process of the layer that I had to remove. I had the intellectual aspects, but I didn't apply it yet. I had all of that information based in psychology, everything based in neuro-linguistic programming, behavioral science, everything. But I wasn't applying it to myself. I didn't understand these aspects yet. I didn't sit with myself. I was using it as an external anchor. I was using it as an anchor. I was feeding my emotional attachment because best believe every time someone came into the space with me and we were having a conversation, I would immediately be a fucking psych student to them and be like, yeah, but you got to understand it might be this, this, and this. And then I started doing that to a narrative of myself to make myself seem or give myself a projection of being really intellectual or being really, but my environment didn't match it. A lot of times we bring ourselves into these spaces where our environment doesn't match. The reason your environment doesn't match once you get this information is because it's supposed to give you discomfort. You're not supposed to settle once you're in that space. You have awakened something inside of yourself. It's time to go further. It's time to expand. But if you get stuck within these emotional attachments and you got used to projecting, you got used to being right, you got used to never being wrong, you got used to everybody telling you yes, you got used to everybody saying something to you. The moment that somebody challenges you on a level that is not, that's just forcing you to be vulnerable, you'll sit there and be like, nah, you changed. Even in the difference of aspects of changing. Remember, vulnerability is direct and being open. Vulnerability allows you to evolve. That means you can have the same plan. Once you remove a layer, you remove the next layer, you remove the next layer, because I'm going to give you the whole process. Me being in the space that I'm in now, the challenge was everything had to change. I had to accept everything had to change. Nothing is to stay the same. And when I say nothing, when we say nothing's going to stay the same, we have to understand nothing is to stay the same. Nothing. In my mindset now, based on the mindset when I was 19, I'm 35 now. When I was 19, my mindset was like, when I'm 35, I'm not working for anybody else. That was the energy that I took into that space. I said it. I was like 19. I ain't working for nobody else. By the time I'm 35, I'm gonna be retired. I ain't working for nobody else. And I set that up. I set that out. Set it and forget it. Didn't even think about it no more. Because in the back of my mind, the only thing that made that shit seem far away is because I didn't define it yet. I didn't understand it. Everything in taking such an ownership, because that's an ownership rule. Every time you say I am, you're taking ownership. That is the precursor to ownership. You're opening up the space. Uh-huh. Yes. It's okay. It's all right it's all right for you to outgrow motherfuckers. It's all right for you to outgrow motherfuckers. And this is the thing about outgrowing. This is the thing about outgrowing. As you outgrow, you are met. There's a difference between transformation and metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is the entire change. Transforming is the shifting through the lenses until you come to a point where there's no till the lenses of your old self no longer exist. So when you're going through the transformation, you're only shifting through the different identities that you've already previously created. Remember, you already created every identity before you got it. You set up every identity. You set up every possibility based on this identity going to serve this purpose, this identity going to serve this purpose. But me being in that space at 19, saying that I am as my precursor, until I understood the power of me saying that, until I really looked at it, I was always in a constant state of, since I was stuck within my wounds, I was always projecting. So every time something didn't go my way, inner child, every time something didn't go my way, I didn't get what the fuck I wanted, and because I didn't define that energy within inside of myself, I would shut down. Similar to I would shut down or I would react based on the emotional blockage or the emotional point of where I was. No matter where I was. When I said I am retiring, when I turn 19, when I'm retiring, when I turn 35, I'm not working for the man, an emotional wound. I'm not working for the man, an emotional wound. And when I went home, I left, I went back home because I left the home situation because all the traumatic events was there. I was running away from that. So everything I did was based on running away from that. I was running away from the emotional catalyst that brought me into a certain mindset. I was running away from it. So now when I went back to it, I was like, I had this information. So I went into that space and had the conversation. Yeah, I'm retiring when I turn 19. But when I went into that old space, everybody gave me a reason of why you can't do that. And since I didn't deal with the emotional channel, because when they first said those types of things, they were living in that space. Mm-hmm. They were living in that emotional space. The only reason motherfuckers, and this is the key in understanding why motherfuckers will not support your growth, they can't, it's not that they won't, it's that they can't. They can't see you at that level. They can't see you. When we always talk about why do strangers support me more than my own friends, my own family? Why do strangers support me more than my own friends and my own family? Your family is based in the emotional process or your trauma, your karmic family. They're related to you based upon the trauma. The trauma, your traumas, the events that happen to you are in your darkness. So they're only used to seeing you inside of your darkness. That's why when you go outside of your darkness and you're stuck in this emotional attachment, you stuck within projecting your light all the time. You want to be all love and light. You want to be all peace. You want to stay in that space because everybody's like, yeah, the only reason motherfuckers are attaching to you, they're not connecting to you. They're projecting to you. I don't know how many conversations I've seen on my timeline or how many conversations I've had to where everybody was like, yo, we need to build this and we need to do this and we need to do this and yo, we just need to do this. And then everybody be excited as hell, everybody feeling good about having a conversation, excited as shit, having a conversation. But when it came to actually building a true plan, nobody knew what to do. Nobody knew what to say. Everybody had an intellectual idea, but no one that grew an example as becoming a catalyst to that, to actually build some shit. That was one of the things when I was looking at my emotional development. If you haven't looked at that video is on here. I did that one Thursday, talking about generational wealth is the byproduct of financial literacy is the byproduct of emotional literacy. They didn't have the emotional literacy. They were still, the reason that we all came into that space was based on an emotional attachment. We were still angry about something in our own lives. We were still upset about something in our own lives. We were still living in a space of fear in our own lives. Everybody was in there was based on fear because the conversation started with some antagonist type shit. We got to get away from the white man or whatever. I'm like, all right, cool, bet. You can't get away from your kids. You can't get away from your kids. You're always going to be paying child support to your kids. Until you take ownership of your children, they're not a benefit to you. Everything down here works for you. Mm-hmm. Yes. Putting yourself in that space of mindset of being stuck within that paradigm with yourself. Everybody can come together, but until you do this, until you are ready to do your internal work, nothing else is going to you can't cement nothing in time. You can't become time, therefore you can't cement anything. A lot of times when we're stuck within these emotional attachments, it's not based on cementing anything. You can't put anything in cement. You can't make anything in a stance because it's based on an attachment. It's based on a projection. The minute that the feeling is gone, then the drive is gone. Are you being driven by your emotions, or are you driving are you being driven by your emotions? That's how most of your conversations are going to be based on projection. Are you driven by your emotions? I'm sorry, I get passionate. No, you're emotional. Passion is inside vulnerability. I had to learn passion is inside vulnerability. Me being vulnerable, me being open, vulnerable, ready to receive, ready to learn, always open, unbiased, ownership mentality. That's where my passion lies. I had to stop confusing my passions with prolonging the process of death that I needed to go through. You can be very passionate about something to yourself. You can say, I'm very passionate about this, but you have to break it down. When I'm passionate about my works. I'm passionate about healing. I'm passionate about I'm in the path of my heart. I'm in the path of my heart. I am compassionate as hell. I'm willing to listen. I'm open to that space. I open up my space at all times for that type of energy to do that healing process, because I'm not projecting a thought process. I'm not projecting from a bias point. Well, every time if someone when I look back at it, I'm like, when I used to listen to conversations or the conversations I had and how biased or how it was like multiple motherfuckers projecting into a space. They were all projecting from their own standpoint to keep that identity of why they were there. Your passion is inside of your vulnerability. That's where you learn how to do. That's the learning aspects of your purpose. Your purpose and your passion are within your vulnerability. They're within that being open. With what we think we have, when we think we're living in a purpose over here or we have a passion over here, a lot of the times it's based on prolonging the death that needs to happen. You'll try to hold something up so long in the old aspects of yourself that is maintaining an identity. And every time you're in this space, the identity gets challenged. When you're stuck within a projection, your passion is ownership. Basically, your passion is ownership. Your passion is in what you own of yourself. That means owning and accountability to yourself. My passion is not in the crib that I have. My passion is not in the car that I drive. My passion is not in the relation. My passion is not in that. That is an external aspect. But my passion can be represented in the owner. I cannot use my passion until I've taken ownership or accountability of my emotions. You can't do it. I remember I'm so passionate about my job. Why am I passionate about my job? The only reason I wasn't really passionate about my job, I was projecting inside of my job this false sense of passion because it gave me a reason to escape. I'm passionate about my love. No, you haven't defined the love within inside of yourself. You haven't defined the self-love within inside of yourself. So it's not passion, it's projection. You're projecting. You're living through the wound. I'm passionate and I'm born. I'm passionate. My passion is on your passion. My passion is only based in my vulnerability. I'm open. I'm passionate about being open. I'm passionate about being vulnerable. I'm passionate about listening, learning to respond. I'm passionate about the flow. I'm passionate about my plan. I can adjust my plans if there's something that comes into that space. A lot of times we will stay inside spaces, relationships, jobs, whatever it may be, for that false sense of control because we have not set a course or our own plan. I did not set the course for my own plan. So since I didn't set a course for my own plan, I allowed the external aspects of time, which is a behavior. Time is only a behavior. It's an aptitude of behavior. You act a certain way around certain times. It's an aptitude of behavior. Once I became time, once you become time, once you define and discipline yourself in the aspects of you becoming your time, your value, now you're passionate because you are time. I have a passion in my time because I define myself in that space. You will be able to tell when you do not value, you will be able to understand the aptitude or the value of the time, or if you're stuck within a loop of time because you're stuck within a distraction. Yes. You mad because somebody told you no. So now every time that you go back into that space with this person that told you no, all you remember is what they told. All you remember is your reaction to why they said no. So you hold on everything that they said no about. So everything else around that you ain't even listening to. You like, you said no to me. That's all I care about. You said no to me. Your inner child being coming, that it's a catalyst of the wound, it automatically triggered by the wound. That's how your wounds get triggered. Because you stuck in it, but I don't want to do that type of shit. Nah. They're like, I was listening to the radio today on my way to on the way to go pick up my candles and stuff. And I was listening to the Breakfast Club. The spirit always wanted me to listen to the Breakfast Club at the most unopportune time, at the most weirdest times. But he was talking about Camilla Harris and that other black guy, and they were saying what America isn't racist and all of this shit. And he was like, but there's documentation. And I'm listening to this conversation, and I'm like, that's not it. He was like, that's why they keep doing what they're doing. That's not it. You're not, there's no ownership. Most of the times when I was stuck in certain spaces and always blaming other people for shit because I didn't take any ownership. Ownership is going to put you back at the ownership is going to put you into that void, that no self. Ownership is going to take you into that void, that no self. It's going to take you in there with everything that you ever, once you say that you own, you taking ownership of your life, it's going to take you into that void naturally, that black hole. It's going to take you into that space. And now you fighting inside of that space. A lot of us came into our awakened stage, but now we're inside the hole. You ain't defined what's inside of that hole. Exactly. Once you got, whoa. He would just buy somebody like, all right, oh no, buy your shit. Cause that's all you get. That's the narrative of what you need to do. If I can't own it, if I don't own myself, then I can't own anything else. I can't build a basis. I can't really set a claim to anything. But I have to have emotional literacy before I have financial literacy. I'm going from, most of us get stuck in this vantage point of vicarious trauma or secondary trauma. That means based on our own traumatic events, we live through other individuals' traumas. Earl Simmons. We live through other motherfuckers' traumas. That's the basis of trauma bonding. You have a conversation and we confuse what is vulnerability with emotional projection, because think about the conversation that you have. Have you taken ownership for the conversation? Or is it something like, or does it go something like this? You having a conversation, you and Shorty, you and your man, y'all having a conversation, your homegirl, your friend, whoever you building with, and the first things y'all start talking about is the things that everybody did to y'all. So y'all built the whole space based on what everybody else did to y'all. But yeah, girl, see, we all together now. Yeah, bro, we all together. Yeah, but girl, you got to understand, I'm here now. I ain't never going to do them type of things to you. Because I used to go through types of shit like that. Everybody wanted to do me dirty and shit like that. I now tend to stay away from individuals that cannot take any type of accountability for their actions or being able to communicate of their actions. Through an emotional projection of perspective, you will always find somebody having a conversation of that narrative. They don't take accountability. They will very easily shut off. When I learned the difference between vulnerability and emotional projection, changed everything. I look back at I was like, nigga, I'm emotionally projecting I'm emotionally projecting. I made a post on my Facebook page about how to talk to your man, how to talk to your man joint. And when I watched it, I was like, that changed the whole way that I had a conversation. It hit me differently because that was a conversation. When you're emotionally projecting, the first thing that you're going to say is going to be a kill shot. It's going to set the whole term of the narrative in order everything else is non and void. After you made this, since you're so used to reacting and being right in that sense, you will say something that makes everything null and void. Automatically. You will say something that makes everything null and void. When you're in accountability for yourself and you're open with yourself and you're learning, you come through this healing process and you are integrated with your shadow, you're not afraid of anybody pulling anything out of your shadow. 90% of the time, the reason that Black people don't like therapy is because it's a level of vulnerability that will take away their identity. Most people do not like therapy because it's a level of vulnerability that's going to challenge every one of their identities. Most people, when we get into relationships, friendships based in trauma bonds, we will maintain that relationship because it helps us maintain a certain identity. But the moment that you wake up and you start looking back at, the moment that you start waking up, all you're doing is acknowledging all of your wounds. That's all awakening is. When you're becoming aware, You're becoming aware of all of your wounds and all of your shadows. Until you accept your shadows, until you accept those aspects of yourself, guess what you're going to start doing? You're going to start projecting through your fucking wounds in a more definitive sense. Now, everything in your space, you're going to sit there and be like, I'm tired of toxic niggas. I'm tired of these toxic bitches. I'm tired of narcissistic ass motherfuckers coming in my life. I'm tired of these energy vampires. You're going to grab a new identity, grab a new vocabulary. You just upgraded your vocabulary to the same aspects. The emotional vampires are only the debt collectors. Did you ever think about it that way? The emotional vampires are only debt collectors. They're collecting your debt. You go into a space, you feel emotionally drained. Once I define my emotions, once I defined the value of my emotions, no one can take my energy away from me because of the natural boundary set. The only time something can drain you is when you go there and you haven't defined your energy. That's the only way they can feed, is because you have a need or a want. The only way a narcissist can work is if there's implements of that within inside of yourself. That's the only reason that they make sense to you. That's the only reason you can identify them, because they're an aspect of an identity that you have not dealt with yet. That's why they're there. But you're used to the emotional attachment, so you're used to avoiding. They trigger your avoidant wound. They trigger your neglect wound. They trigger your responsive wound. And then you'll have people put up post about, I saw a post the other day, and they were like, the dating pool now for women is porn addicts and niggas that are extra sensitive and you got to do some emotional shit for, and gym niggas and all of this shit and all of this stuff. And every time I'm looking at shit now, I'm like, porn addicts, niggas that are addicted to sex on a lower level, they haven't learned how to cultivate their energy. So you go into the space acting a certain way because maybe I didn't learn how to cultivate my energy. The reason that it was crazy because until I understood this, I was stuck within the space. I was just avoiding the shit. There was chicks that came up around me throughout my growth process that were literally sexually abused while they were younger. So they come into my space, and me looking at them being in this hypersexualized sense, I would write that shit off. Like, yo, shorty a fucking hoe, or shorty a fucking freak. But in order for me to change the narrative, the story, I had to understand into a deep aspect. It was coming into my space for a reason. It was coming into my position for a reason. The only thing that would stop me was I didn't have a plan. I was just going with the flow and just doing me. I was just still in a state of accepting certain shit. And then I would try to flip it. Later on, I try to flip it back around because I was projecting into the space. I came into the space in a certain way. I didn't set a boundary. I didn't understand the emotional concept. I didn't understand the conversation. So the conversation they're having with me, they getting upset with me. I'm still acting and I'm still reacting. Nah, you got to understand, sit, da 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 da. And I'm giving them this damn narrative to make them feel good about themselves. I'm no longer about making motherfuckers feel good. I'm trying to make you feel better. You come to me, you gonna get better. There's nothing about feeling good. Feeling good is the ultimate attachment, an external anchor to make you feel good. You make me feel like no one else ever made me feel. All right, it's gonna go away soon. I only can operate from the higher aspect. All right, my last relationship for sure, I kept pointing fingers, then I realized we mirrored each other. Woo! Whoo! That's them karmic relationships are gonna fuck your life up. That karmic relationship gonna fuck your whole life up. You're gonna be like, oh shit, I can't use my bag of tricks. My bag of tricks don't work. You sitting there the entire time in that whole relationship, and you sitting there, y'all keep pulling out the same damn weapons. Y'all, we've all seen. I don't know if y'all seen the cartoons. You ever seen the cartoons? The two motherfuckers going at each other, and they keep pulling up the same weapons. Like, god damn, Mr. and Mrs. Smith was a good example of that. Spirit has brought that through. Mr. and Mrs. Smith was a good example of motherfuckers with multiple identities. Yep. Mr. and Mrs. Smith was a good example of, go back and look at Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Good example of motherfuckers you having secret identities. You going into a space with multiple identities. I talked about that in the polygamy lecture. You going into these spaces with multiple identities, trying to maintain all of your identities based on you projecting into the space. So your conversation, you ain't used to somebody being direct with you. You don't know what it really is because you ain't defined it within inside of yourself yet. It's okay. We've all done that shit. But until you deal with it, you won't understand the macrocosm. Uh-huh. You looking at yourself. Ha. Ha. You looking at yourself and you wanted to take on it. We got to take ourselves out of trying to create a new life or trying to find ourselves and realize that you're creating. You don't have to find shit. You don't have to find anything. The space will be created regardless. The space that's created is based on what the fuck you need to learn. So when you go into a space and you have not dealt with your own emotional wounds, that means you ain't dealt with the loss of your mother or your mother not being in your life. You ain't dealt with or the father or whatever aspect that happened into your life. That wound will be projected over and over and over and over and over and over again. Until I accepted that my mother called me an accident from a state of projection, I moved through my entire space always trying to prove something. I ain't no goddamn accident. It was always going back to that until I removed all of the layers and got to the emotional point. Because my mom told me that when I was 6. My mom told me that when I was 11. My mom definitely told me that when I was 12. My mom told me that when I was 16. That was my mom's go-to line. She knew it triggered me. She knew it triggered me because I always responded to that damn saying. I'm only in control of my reaction. So when my moms kept saying it, I kept reacting the same way. She kept giving me the same result until I took ownership. Ownership was being able to merge and understand, like, go deeper, like, yo, my mother's talking through a wound. She's talking through an emotional wound. My mom is in a state, an emotional projecting state. She's not saying that shit to me. She's saying that shit to herself. That's what she feels. That's not what I feel. Once I was like, damn, I had to be honest with myself. The first layer of being honest was like, why do I keep acting this way? My behavior. That's what had me stuck. That predestination complex. Because like many of us will think and will attach to external narratives, we'll be like, well, your job's supposed to do this, and then you're supposed to get married, and you're supposed to do this. But what's your plan into that space? When you stuck in a state of projection, you ain't really planning anything. You just going with the flow and then adjusting your projection into that space, that hoping and coping. Hopefully I'll find somebody. Hopefully they'll stop killing us. Hopefully they'll stop. Yeah, you stuck in some Huxtable shit. Exactly. You sitting there in your life. You stuck in this space looking at everything else to be your narrative. Why do you think you live? Why do you think you attach to certain niggas in certain movies and shows? Why do you think you attach to certain things? Because it's already rooted inside of your subconscious. You already put it there. It was already put there. The traumatic experience that had your ass mad at your dad had you looking at every hood classic movie with a nigga that didn't have a dad. Yeah, nigga, that's my life. Every movie that you saw because your mother had multiple niggas in the fucking house, that's your real issue. That's the real shit you need to deal with. Everything else is a replication of that, or is a point of you projecting into that space. That's why you attach to it. I didn't plan on falling in love. You don't fall in love, you rise into love. You already love. A lot of the narratives that we want to stay within is based on keeping your ego intact. Most of the shit, everything down here is based to feed your ego's body, the ego body, that body of light, that lower dimensional projection of light. Everything around you is your ego. Everything around you is your ego while you down here. Until you face it, then it's gonna keep doing what it's doing. You gonna keep going through that cycle. Your job ain't shit. This ain't shit. This ain't giving me what I want because you ain't defining inside of yourself. You're still using external values to define your space. You ain't gave yourself no depth. You ain't expounded inside of yourself at all. That's the narrative though. Like, it's funny, like that's the narrative. Like, you looking like when you really start understanding these emotional projections from people, and you really like me just being a psychoanalyst and I just analyze everything like automatically when it goes in. I'm not looking for it. It just comes to me. And we'll get into that with more honoring thoughts. As I'm honoring my thoughts, as I'm like now honoring my thoughts and bringing it always to the higher aspect, a lot of things are just filtered. A lot of times in your life, a lot of the shit that you had in your life was just based on a fucking filter. You put a filter in there. You put some filler in there or some other shit in there. You like, why the fuck am I doing this in my life? I've said this many times in many lectures. If I stayed in the predestination complex, in emotional projection, I would always feel like I'm trying to catch up. As long as you remain projecting through your wounds, not dealing with your wounds, not talking with your inner child, not learning how to conversate with your inner child, not doing that internal work, you will always feel like you're trying to catch the fuck up. You will always feel like you're trying to catch the fuck up. When you come into a true state of vulnerability, a true state of openness, when you start integrating with your shadow, you wake up great. You wake up in gratitude. You ain't got to say, that's the program. Remember, I am grateful. I am in gratitude. I am in peace. I am in love. That's the precursor. That's not a projection anymore. That is me defining myself. So now, if I have any projections or I have any attachments, those shits are going to be the first things that show up in my fucking space. I am love. So now everybody in my fucking space, at the point in time when I yell that I am love to myself during a meditation, any motherfucker that don't love themselves, don't know what love is, they're from an aspect of lust, They were from an aspect of control. They were from an aspect of an anchor. Those are the first motherfuckers that came up. That's why whenever I started first doing my meditations, and I would sit here and say, I am love, I am peace, I am light. I would say these things to myself in the beginning, and then my phone would go off. It would be an individual. The spirit was like, nigga, here's the first motherfucker you need to deal with. This nigga about to call you again, talking about his baby mama took some money from him, or his girl took some money from him, or your homegirl about to call you and talk about, yo, let me tell you about last night. Honor your thoughts. They're not meant for that space. They're only used to the old you. They will keep pulling you back to the old aspects of you. If you willingly keep going back to the aspects of your old self, you will always find yourself projecting through your old self. So you will not evolve. You will always be in a position with yourself of, but this, no. You got to be direct with yourself before you can expect. You got to be direct with yourself. You got to be open and honest with yourself. You got to really be able to sit down with yourself and be like, I need this much time away from everybody. And you got to accept that. Because after you say, I need to work on me. The moment that you say you need to work on you, everything's gonna come into the space to help you work on you. Everything down here works for you. Everything down here works for you. You're now taking the ownership mentality, that LLC mentality, that accountability. You can keep running all you want. Keep running from it. There's no more veil. That's one thing I wanted to say. There's no more veil. There's no more veil. There's no more, I'm going to do it tomorrow. There's no more. Everything that you used to use to stay safe and comfortable is gone. All of your comforts are gone. The physical representation of all of your comforts being gone is you sitting here in this COVID-19 shit. Them niggas giving you an aspect of a vaccination. Those are physical aspects. Those are the physical aspects. Those are the physical apparatuses. But you want to react to that. You want to project to that. Ain't nobody going to tell me to take a goddamn vaccine. Nobody told you to take a fucking vaccine. The more that you say you were not going to do it, the more that you sit there with your arm crossed like a little fucking kid and buck against the world or buck against your shadow, get emotional, the more energy they have, they already said they ain't going to take it. Now we're going to say this is what they going to need to do, or they can't have this. What are you about to do? Until you take this ownership, until you take ownership of you, until you take that true ownership that you want to say you're the original, that's the precursor. You want to say you're the original creator, you're the original people. Okay, cool. That's the precursor. That means I am the original. That means, i.e., everything that is down here, I created. Everything that's sustaining down here is based on my own behavior. It feeds off of my behavior because all it can do is feed off of behavior. That's all it can do. It feeds off behavior and emotion. You got used to reacting in relationships. You got used to reacting in friendships. So now that you're in this new space with yourself, you don't know how to respond anymore. You scared. Now the projection that you've been putting out there, now that fear is now what's coming to the surface. That fear, there's only two emotions, love and fear. That fear is coming to the surface. Now you can't be angry anymore because you're in fear. Now you can't be sad anymore because you're in fear. That's all you're doing. You're extracting from fear. You're adrenochrome. Go look back at that lecture. That's what you're entertaining your own fucking siphoning. You going into a space to be entertained. Ooh, I'm being entertained into this space. Yes. The moment that I sat here and said, the moment that I put into my mind, I was like, the mind is all, I am the mind, and the mind, all is mine. I accepted everything. The moment that I accepted that, and I really accepted, I'm not talking about like the intellectual aspect, because the intellectual aspect to have you sitting there being like, but I didn't create that, but I didn't create that, because you're not seeing the benefit inside of it. It's a behavior. You're not seeing the benefit inside of it because you ain't understanding the behavior. It's only acting out based on your behavior. It's detriment. It's in a state of degradation. It's in a state of being fucking de-evolving because it's in a state of behavior. It doesn't have what you. It only exists based on your behavior and your reaction to it. But you stuck in that state of projecting. That's why it still exists. That's why when you have a conversation with someone and they sit there at a conversation with you and they're direct, you don't know how to act with it. You get excited. You get excited because they give attention to your inner child, and that's what your inner child wants. They want that attention. You got that attention, but you don't know what to do with the attention because attention is only based on attachment. Attachment's only based on projection. The projection is only as strong as the light, and the light is only as strong as the darkness that you do not want to deal with. The light is only going to be as strong as the darkness that you don't want to deal with. That's why whenever it goes after a couple months, couple years, couple days at that job, it doesn't serve you anymore, and you mad at it because why did you go there in the first place? Oh, this nigga changed up. He done got some money and changed up. He done got some this and he done changed up. Oh, sis done changed up. The fuck is they supposed to do? Most of the times when you think people are changing, remember that vulnerability aspect. When you think motherfuckers are actually changing, they're evolving. You're not used to evolution. You're used to everything remaining a certain way based on the projection that you put into that space. The moment that something starts to go forward or move forward in its aspects of itself, you don't know how to deal with that. You've been in that space. You've been in this constriction for so long that the moment that something comes into that space and challenges it, you don't want to deal with it. You want to try to make it your way. You want to try to put yourself in that. Nah, but you got to do it. Why? Why? No. We go this way. Have not had an other wake walk up to call me a nigger despite the commercials. I've yet to purchase racism. I was thinking about that shit today. What Johnny Mac just said about I haven't experienced the commercial of racism since owning my shit. Haven't experienced it. Haven't experienced it at all since I owned my shit. Period. I haven't since I've owned my shit. Half of the shit, almost all of the shit. I'm gonna say all of it. Fuck, put all of it on the table. All of the shit, all of the things that I experienced based on emotional attachment. Experience is based on emotional attachment. Therefore, if you get triggered, it's an emotional attachment. It's an experience that you got to learn the lesson to. All of the things that is already in the works. I have the book and the workbook. I have that's already in the works. Thank you for bringing that up because yes, that's already in the works. I was actually looking at the book and the workbook formats today when I was putting them together. That is in the works. Much, much gratitude. That is secret. That's when you in sync. This mindset that you have, that liability mindset, that lack mindset, that blaming the world on your shit, will have you sitting in a space repeating over and over and over and over again the same narrative, the same undercurrent, not addressing the current. It's not about the pattern. It's not about the plan. It's about the undercurrent that created that plan, that gave you that idea. You want to be right. You want to make your way the right way. You want to keep that identity intact. That identity has to die. That identity gotta die. All those identities you created have to die. Or else you just got another lens that you looking at your whole life through. I just want to have respect for being, I just want somebody to respect me and love me the way that I love. It's not about, no, that's not how it works. Once I define the love inside of once I define the love with inside of me, when I go into a space, it's based on honoring my thought initially, going into that space to learn and learning how to honor it's learning how to honor how I embody and use my emotional aspects in that light. It's not about me, let me bend to this, let me bend to that, let me adjust to this. I'm not adjusting to anything that is not going to help me grow. I like discomfort. I'm in that state of discomfort. I love discomfort. I love to be uncomfortable because that's where I flourish. You flourish in uncomfort. You flourish in discomfort. If you put a seed in the ground and you don't cover up the seed, it can't grow. There's no darkness for it to germinate. There's nothing for it to push through. What the fuck does it need to grow for? Your trauma bonds keep you in that state of projecting your light burnt out. That's why half of the times when you say shit, half of the times when I was having conversations with my goddamn self, because that's all the conversation, that's all you're doing. Half of the times when I'm saying things to people, I'm trying to be hurtful to them so they don't get closer to me. That's how my conversations were. But I wanted to keep the identity. I wanted to be the real nigga. I wanted to be the real nigga. But then I was looking at my space, and this is one of the things one part of my aspect of my story. I was like, and I thought about it. Every gangster, every boss, everybody that was doing something to a certain level of ownership, them niggas had suits. I remember when I met my father when I was 12, and I started being around my father when I was 16. Every time I was back in New York with my father had me in polos, button-ups, suits. He had my whole style of dress was different. He was like, "You're an owner." My uncle always tell me, "You're an owner." My pops would always tell me it's about business, and my father would always tell me that I'm an owner. So they were both necessary parts inside of my life. Ownership of everything. And I'm gonna break that down. So every time I'm around them, like, damn, I remember my uncle. Every time my father's brothers, every time we would go out to a restaurant, my uncle Rio, which passed away in 2016. He transitioned in 2016. He would bring a stack out and sit it on the table. He would take a stack out and sit it on the table. Sit that stack on the table. It'd be a stack of hundreds or stack of 20s. It would always be a G sitting on the table. He would sit that shit on the table, right there in the middle of the table. If the server didn't come refill drinks like they were supposed to refill drinks, He take a step. He take something away. Then he come ask a certain question. He takes something away. Whatever was left on the table, that was that server's tip. I only seen 2 servers the entire time get that full G as a tip from them. As a tip. I remember one day I was sitting there with my uncle, and he was like, I was sitting there actually like, I was like, why do we, every time we go to a place, you do that same method? You get that, why you do the same method? He was like, this is my same uncle that, I'm going to break down his story on him too, break it down any further. He was like, you got to understand. He was like, I want you to understand this. I want you to run. I want you to hold this to your mind. And it's in my mind. It's one of the things that actually sparked my LOC mentality when I started doing my shadow work. He was like, there's acceptance and expectancy. When you expect something, you're going to try to voice it. When you expect some shit, you're going to voice, you're going to project you're going to project something, you're going to project your thoughts into that space. When you're in a state of acceptance, you are in control of your emotions and you understand your reactions. We never were at tables. We never act unruly. We would ask them. We wouldn't be like, hey. That wasn't us in any bar, any place that we went to. Never did that. We sat there and observed the situation. Oh, it looked kind of busy in here. All right, cool. And we just did what we had. He did what he had to do. That's your space when you're inside of your purpose. Your purpose, your truth of yourself, you know how to remove yourself from said situation. You know how to remove your energy from said situation. If it does not benefit your growth, remove yourself from that fucking situation. A lot of times we get stuck in these spaces because we have an expectancy and we're stuck behind. Remember, as I just said, you're always trying to catch up. When you're coming through a state of projecting, you're always trying to catch up to your own light. You're already your light. You got to define that inside of your darkness. As long as you're always emotionally attached to some shit, you will never feel caught up. You will always feel this need of, I did this, so this should happen. I did this, so this should happen. I don't expect shit. I accept everything that comes into that space because those are my lessons. I no longer sit here and try to manipulate a situation emotionally because I accept. If it doesn't fit my narrative, if it doesn't fit where I'm at with myself, then it's time for me to remove myself from it. I'm not going to fight back and forth. I'm not going to sit here and say, this is why niggas don't do this and niggas don't get married and why, because women don't know how to talk to people. I need to learn how to have that conversation with myself first so I can have a defining definition, so I can stop using external anchors, so I can stop being dependent upon something. I own my conversations. Everything that I say, I own. Everything that I do, I own. If not, it will be used against me later on. And then I won't know how to accept it because I had an expectation. But I did this, and this for you. And I did this, and this for you. And I did this, and this. That don't matter. Most of the things that you want to do most of the things that we try to say we did this, and this, it comes from 2 spaces. It's a basic necessity that you have to do anyway. It's a basic necessity that must be performed inside of your space anyway. Anything outside of that challenges you, that's what you're trying to get to. Because you got used to reaction. Most of the relationships that I built, friendship or otherwise, it was always based on a secret. They told me their story. I was like, God damn, your story is sad. And I would sit there in that space, and that's the only reason I was around them. So since that was the only reason I was around them, from age 4 to 18, you were up by 7 a.m. every day on the clock for education, plus other programs in your life you participate in, expecting stimulus, but you got. Except 24 hours of yours now. That's the exact point. That's it. You got to remove the expectation. The expectation is going to leave you attached to some shit. You expect something to happen. So since you're stuck in a state of expectancy, you keep the things around you that fulfill that expectation. You got family members right now. You got friends right now that based on your lack of accountability, they have a lack of accountability. I'm gonna build. We're gonna build something right now in front of us. We're gonna build something. You sitting in your house. You sitting in your crib. You want to lose a couple pounds. You're gonna build up. You want to lose some weight. You want to get in shape. You want to eat healthy. You say, I am wanting to be more healthy. I am wanting to get in shape. Precursor. You sit there with your phone inside of your hand. Craziest thing about I'm gonna show my contact list. My contact list on this phone is 12 people. My contact list is 12 people. 12 people. 12 people. That's it. Eight of those 12 people are webinars and companies and my navigation shit. My navigation and shit. Everything that's in my contact list has a benefit of reciprocating energy to me. It's reciprocation and growth. Everything in my contact list is based on reciprocation and growth. Everything. That means if it ain't talking about growth or growth, advancement, challenging me to do some shit, it ain't in my phone. That's your digital real estate. My Facebook page, digital real estate. Your Facebook page is your digital real estate. Your Instagram is your digital real estate. Your Snapchat, your Twitter, your LinkedIn, all that shit, your club, all that shit. That's your digital, that's your real estate. That's your digital real estate. I'm an owner. I'm an owner. Whoa, yeah. I'm an owner. I am an owner. So now everything in my space must reflect that. So if it's not an owner, if it doesn't have an owner mentality, it comes to the table. And this is the state of you stop. This is the point in between when you're going into your process of you're coming into this healing work. When you're healing yourself, when you're coming into healing, you're removed. Remember as I said, when you awaken, you're only acknowledging your wounds. When you are coming into your awakened self, you're only acknowledging your wounds and how they personally work for you. How your wounds have worked for you. That's why I said the first stage in you coming into a healing process that we go through when you working with me is you will accept that you benefited from your trauma. You benefited from your trauma. Because if you didn't benefit from it, you wouldn't be here anyway. So it had a purpose. I'm gonna make you own. We gotta own our purpose. You gotta take ownership before you can even tap into your purpose. Or else you're gonna be sitting there living through other motherfucking shadows. Through that trauma bonding. You got everybody in your life based on a certain purpose because you haven't found your purpose. So now when you start dealing with yourself and that contact list starts to get shorter, you're getting closer to your purpose. You're getting more and more uncomfortable. You go watch a Bobby Hemmett lecture, Brother Panic lecture. You go watch a Phil Valentine lecture. You go watch a lecture. The first thing you want to go do is sit there and be like, ooh, you feel uncomfortable around certain people. You need to learn. You need to go live in that discomfort. Until I was able to simplify crazy ass experience. Until I was able to simplify what I learned from a Bobby Hemmett lecture and bring it into my own space. That means learn it, synthesize it, break it down, and build myself up with that information. I would avoid having conversations with my own fucking mother. But once I learned how to synthesize it, I was confident because once you take in the information, you can become truly confident. Until you take in the information and you apply it to your own life and apply it to yourself, you're going to sound real arrogant because it's based on regurgitation. There's motherfuckers out here right now that are 60 years old still talking about the white man is the devil. But if you're the original, then who was the devil before him? You ain't applied it yet. There's still motherfuckers running around here right now that still have their wounds present. And it's crazy for me because I just see the wound. And then I talk to the wound. I don't talk to them. I'm talking to the wound. Because they're not talking to me. They're talking through the wound. I don't talk to the projection. I talk to you. That's why it hurts so much. That's why it burns. When a motherfucker talks directly to you, not your identity, they talk to you, and you start. This is why when you go into certain situations and you start feeling all woozy, and you start submitting, and you start feeling weak, and you start giving in, and then you like, hold up, wait, I can't give in. I gotta look for a reason not to give in. Because they challenging those projections. I used to think niggas was like this until I met you. I used to think niggas was like this until I met you. You still living in the projection. You still living in the projection. Come out of the projection, accept flow. Don't try to bring it into that projection because that's that manipulation aspect. You're gonna try to keep everything inside of your space based on a certain level of frequency that's below you, because you're used to shit being below you. Because you're already a god. You're already the goddess. You're already that archetype. So you're naturally going to do things as a human would think a god would do. Because you said you were Christian, but you were never really Christian. When I say that I was Catholic, nigga, I was really fucking Catholic. I went to catechism. I had to study that shit. Those 16 books that are missing, we learned those shits in catechism. So I was really fucking Catholic. I went through the processes that went with the rituals of being Catholic. That was my beginning framework. So when I did the work, when it came to that stage of motherfuckers saying Jesus ain't real and all of this shit, I bypassed that whole fucking stage. Instead of me sitting there saying that Jesus ain't real, like, nigga, I'm Jesus. Because when you go look at it, it says, I am the breath, I am the air of breath, I'm all of these aspects. Nigga, that's an affirmation. I read it as an affirmation. Oh, nigga, now that shit makes sense to me now. Because I'm not avoiding it. Everything down here is food. Everything down here is food. It depends on you to what the fuck you gonna put onto your plate. Everything down here is food. What are you putting on your plate? You putting on the shit on your plate to make you feel good and shit that make you feel good keep you sleepy. The shit that make you feel good keeps your ass sleepy. Every single time. The shit that make you feel better keep your ass up at night. The shit that make you feel better make you start questioning your life. The shit that's gonna make you feel better is gonna make you start questioning things. The shit that make you feel better is gonna make you start setting those tones or those boundaries and accepting the tone or the boundaries that you need to set. The shit that make you feel good is gonna keep you projecting from a certain space. The shit that make you feel good is gonna have you avoiding the lessons that you need to learn. That's the shit that make you feel good. The treatment. The treatment process. You sitting there treating yourself. You're treating yourself to feel good. You're treating yourself because your inner child has not yet been disciplined or learned anything. Woo! Laziness, yes. One of the things that I had to learn from myself was, and motherfuckers did not understand this about me when I was working for people, when I was working in corporate America, we're gonna deem it that. Motherfuckers did not understand why I was always looking for something to do. I would always look every time at every one of my jobs. The reason that I excelled and was going through all of my jobs and I was becoming the manager, carrying keys, they would give me the shit that I wanted, is because I was creating the tone of looking for something to do. Just because you got a job don't mean your ass ain't lazy. Just because you got a job don't mean you putting in work. I'm speaking all of this shit from the experience. Just because you got a job does not mean you're not lazy. Just because you putting in work does not mean you ain't lazy. It's a projection. Because it don't matter what, because you stuck on the byproduct. I ain't doing shit till I get something from it. Nigga, you lazy. You lazy. That's one of the biggest things that I had to break away from in becoming the whole creator. In me becoming a creator. I take one video between Monday and Thursday. I take one video. I go live on Facebook on between 9:45 and 10 o'clock. Between 10:30. I take one video. That video might be 20 minutes. It might be 15 minutes. Depends on when the spirit want me to do. And I make the moves. I throw it out there. It's going out there. I take that one video and I break it down. I break it down and edit it for my YouTube, upload it to the YouTube channel. That's one breakdown. I take it again and I break it down and put it on IGTV. I take it down again and I put it on my reel. I just turn 1 into 4. That's 1 into 4. That's work. That's work. I do this between 10:30 and 12 o'clock. That's work. I'm breaking down these videos. That's Monday through Thursday. On Monday, I'm putting the podcast together. Every other day during the week, sessions, readings, consultations, whatever else comes into that space. That's work. I promote myself. So if I'm promoting myself and I'm in my passion of myself, that means I'm not accepting anything. I'm not accepting anything less than top tier quality. I'm not accepting anything less than top tier quality. That's because my value reflects in that, whatever I present. When I was stuck in emotional attachments, When I was stuck in the lessons that I needed to learn at my jobs, I was used to promoting other people's thoughts. I was used to promoting other people. I was just regurgitating shit. That's something that this is a healing process that you're gonna have to learn. Most of the times when we inside of a certain space, we're just used to projecting up because we're living through a projection or projecting our shit. We're used to others projecting shit. We're used to promoting others' projections. That's why you'll regurgitate something that somebody says, but you ain't got the confidence yet because you ain't applied it to your own life. That's why it doesn't hold any weight. Are you doing it yourself? Because if you were doing it yourself, 90% of the time when I realized with myself that once I really started doing my work and really started dealing with, when I really started owning my own shit, a lot of the conversations and a lot of those places that I would go to, I stopped going to. A lot of the positions or the projections that I would put myself in to experience, once I understood that it was based on my emotional aspects or my attachment to it, I can step away from it and now observe it. My mother lived right down the street. My sister lived right somewhere over there. My mother is just now going through her awakening process. I said, the last thing I said to my mom, you that sitting there smiling for no damn reason. You was like, can you see my pain through my smile? I set the tone. I told my mother, or my mother was not my mother anymore. She became my daughter or my sister. She was my daughter or my sister. She's basically my daughter or my sister. That's what she is. As you advance, you go up, they're in their true position. As you go into your true position, your authentic aspect, your true position, they're in their true position. You see them for what they really are. Mom stay right up the street. I told my mother, I was like, we had a conversation. We've had our conversations. When she's ready, she'll come back in and actually have another conversation. Since I already set the parameters of that space, since I now set the new parameters of that environment, it's up to her to go into that space, not me. A lot of us will sit here and tell ourselves all day, my friend needs to have time to themselves, to learn themselves. But in that same damn sentence, in that same fucking sentence, you'll sit there and be like, I got to go check on my friend. Wait, you just said that they need time to themselves to learn themselves. Honor them by giving them that gift. You're going to have to start honoring motherfuckers by giving them that gift. And that's not based on a state of avoidance. You're going to have to start honoring motherfuckers by giving them that very gift that you need to give to yourself. So if you sit here and say to yourself that you need time, you really need to step into your healing, I can guarantee you the things that are going to come up are going to try to defer you from your healing process. Those are the things that pop up first. It's always the negative aspects that pop up first. Why? Because we were used to the negative aspects. The moment that you say that, yo, we need to have our own media companies and all of this shit, the first thing that pop up is going to be everything that's meant to distract you from doing it. The shit that you accepted in the first place. See, that's why we can't do this because we got this, this, and this. That's why we can't do this because they gonna, fuck you mean? When I launched the official GottaCoAlchemistLLC.com, when I launched the public aspect of my work, what I do, everything that I do, it cost me $406 to get everything off the ground in the legalized wise. I told this story before, talking about like the aspect of COVID-19. COVID-19 was a blessing for me because it sat me on my ass and it took away all my excuses. It took away all my excuses. For time and time and time again, I sat there in that space with myself. There's no need to check on anybody. Only time you checking on them is because there's something you still can manipulate there. Because once you love them, once you're in the aspect of love and compassion, there's no more need for manipulation. There's no more need. There's no more need. It's only when you stuck in a state of you need some shit or some shit you ain't defined within yourself that you feel the need to go honor something in that space and then go manipulate, lower yourself down. But COVID-19 blessed the shit out of me. I got unemployment. Got my unemployment. I already sat in that space and my mom was like, yo, all I need is the time to sit down and really look at the things that I need to launch. Unemployment hit. It cost $400 1 week to do that. Every week that this money came through. Peace. Every week that this money came through, I had a purpose for it. Every week that this money came through, since I was, and I didn't know it, I couldn't explain it, I was outside of every week the money came through. I had a purpose for it to make it an asset. I was turning liabilities into assets. So every week that money came through, website was launched, product was bought, this was put into that state, this was going into there, turned all that shit into an asset. Turn that shit into an asset. From that point, that's when everything came through because I made it an asset. You sitting here in this space with yourself, I'm gonna give you the one of the rules that I learned growing up in Spanish Harlem, growing up in the Harlem World era, growing up in the Dipset era. I remember watching Paid in Full, and every time Cameron would say, you got to double that shit up. You ain't willing to double it up, you can't make that shot. That nigga was teaching niggas about their using niggas' emotions. So that nigga doubled up. I doubled up every single fucking week. Turning into an asset. Assets require your asset. The asset, it being your soul loves sacrifice. Your ego loves suffering. Your soul loves sacrifice. They gave us that other, they flipped it around. They said sacrifice your soul. That's the suffering part. I ain't suffering for nobody because I'm no longer suffering inside of myself. So anything that resembles suffering, I now can see the wounds that are connected to suffering. The fear what about the fear about being responsible for those assets despite having a plan we got to deal with? Excellent fucking question. Excellent question. Once you understand the key of any literacy outside of yourself is the byproduct of you. My emotional literacy, or the understanding my energy or being literate of my energy, that's my primary asset. That means if I'm triggered in an aspect of fear based on creating an asset, that means I have to address in detail that fear. I have to take myself out of avoidance of creating an asset. That means I have to accept everything's going to change me making this asset. Me turning my liabilities and me assessing my liabilities and me becoming into this asset mindset. So now that I'm creating an asset, I understand an asset is only based on my level of the emotional aptitude, which will require the sacrifice of me understanding that emotional aptitude, this asset that I've created. Use an example. Yes, it's a very slow suicide. I like that. I love that. Use an example. I could have easily convinced myself based on attachment, sat there and said in the beginning of the year, well, I'm getting paid every single week with this. I'm getting this money every single week. So as long as I'm getting this money, I always have time. False perception to myself. I always have time since I have the money. So the things that I need to take care of, I can put further back and enjoy because I deserve to feel good. I deserve to feel good. That's liability mindset. My mindset that's a negative. This is a negative. Though it serves me, it serves my lower aspects of myself, ownership. Everything around me will match that. Everything around me is going to match that aspect. So that means I'll sit here and say, yo, I'm going to go do this and I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go take this time to myself. Everything in my space that matches that thought is going to come up. It's going to come up regardless. I'm going to break that down. That's the polarity. Now, everything that matches me wanting to feel good is going to come up in my space. That means friends. That means family. That means everything that can make me feel good in that space that can distract me is going to come up first. So that 6, 7, how much money you got in your unemployment, your check you got, you're going to put into that first. So this is what happens. It's going to run out because it's based on emotion. It was fed to you based on emotions. So the moment that you start feeling good and the money start drying out, you got to go back to your original mindset of what you went into that space in. You went into that space as a liability. You went into that space upset, mad, sick and tired, angry, and all that good shit. You went into that space like that. The reflection or the dip or the decline gonna take you right back to that point. So now you coming to the end of your money coming in. You coming into the end of your money coming in. You coming into that good wave coming in for yourself. Now it's dying up. Now it's time for you to take responsibility. Now you thinking now it's time for you to take responsibility and accountability. You didn't build that space on accountability and ownership. You built that space on a liability. So now you sitting there at the end like everything that's now coming up and showing up in your space, the challenges, and this is the polarity, the challenges that are coming up in your space, they're going to make you feel exactly how you want it to feel. They're going to make you feel the emotional attachment that you went into the space with. So now, everything that could have been an assets challenge your ass. They challenge your triggers. So now that's the polarity on the other end. Now you looking at real estate. Now on your timeline, you got everything about real estate popping up, cryptocurrency popping up, stock trading and investing popping up, all this shit popping up that you should have did in the first place. Those were your assets. But since you were stuck in that attachment, you didn't think about that part. That's the polarity. So switch the polarity. You are in control. You are in ownership. You are the owner. Now, take that story from the different potential. I built myself up to the point and built up those aspects, based on becoming an asset. Now, during the decline, when the money was situated in these positions now I planted my seeds. Now at the end of that, there's no opportunity. I'm gonna break down no excuses a little bit too. So now at the end of that, I was able to take a family trip. I took a whole family trip. Took a nice trip to the beach. I did meditate and elevate from the beach. If y'all don't remember it, I did meditate and elevate from the beach. I didn't do a podcast episode that week. I came back the next week ready to go. Why? Because I already built a base. 1 second. Why is that shit in position? Because I built that base. If you got an example for you. If you go and listen to the God Hour podcast, my podcast, the God Hour podcast, you go listen to the God Hour podcast and you go listen to season 1, episode 1. Season 1, episode 1. And now, go listen to season 1, episode 1. Listen to the production of season 1, episode 1. Then go to the latest episode that I've produced. And listen to the production. There's no excuse for me because my first podcast episode, I didn't know shit about how to mix music. I didn't know anything about how to download, create, do anything with music. I was like, I need to get this shit out. I have a thought. I have the God thoughts. I need to put these shit into this space. I'm led to this space. I had to release myself from all fear. My fears were triggered. My insecurities were triggered. Jealousy was triggered. All of my wounds were triggered. But I launched the first episode. First episodes of the first season of the God Hour podcast was based on me looking for free downloaded beats.com and all of this good shit. I was removing excuses. I could have easily been like, yo, man, I ain't got the money to go be paying for all these niggas to come do beats and shit. Season 2, learn how to build music up, work with loops. Season 3, learn how to work better with them loops. Season 3, you can hear in the beginning, I got mantras all in that shit program. Season 4, the season we're in now, everything from the music to the video ads you see on my social media, all that shit done in house. None of that shit sent out. I sit here and I do all that shit. Well, yeah. Foundation. Why do we start with the roof or the upper body or the image of substance and increase little by little? I'm gonna give you. Here is that key to that, and that's exactly that crazy is what I'm building into. Everything you're doing from your higher self trickles down the head. Your emotional or your intellect, the intellectual aspects of what you know, that's your floor, not your ceiling. That's your floor. In the aspect of us trying to skip steps or try to get past a certain point, for most people, as Jesse in that aspect, we try to start up here and we don't address what's down here first. This is this is the void. This is the no self down here. Everything down here is based on your behaviors anyway. That's why when you get the information and you keep trying to bring it down here, it ain't meant to come down here. You got to synthesize it. You got to simplify that shit. So when I started the podcast, up until now, I have no excuse. I have no excuse. I build from Saturday till Monday is the time that I take to build the podcast. From Saturday to Monday. Monday is when I do the final recordings, the voiceovers, the edits, the mastering, the final masterings, and everything. And I sit here in this space and I put all that shit together. But that shit would not work. And this is your key. That shit's not going to work unless you have surrounded yourself or your environment is in the space of being the environment that you have created is based on that content, your quality of your value. Your environment is what's going to reflect all of your excuses. Think about the build of your life of you wanting to do something in your life. Everything that's in your space of the current state is going to naturally be against you doing that. Everything. Everything. Exactly. As within, as without. There's levels. You got to apply that shit to the mechanics of yourself. Like, it would be nice for me to sit here for this amount of time and sit here and be telling y'all, but like, go through all of the laws, but not having applied it. So you naturally, nigga, oh, that's what that connects to. You can actually nigga, oh shit, that's the learning process. Taking that process. My environment now, everything in my environment matches where I'm at. And it's challenged equally. And this is your key to remove yourself from attachments. Everything in my environment challenged me in reciprocity. It must learn to adapt to the environment to grow. If it's not meant to adapt to my environment to grow, it's going to fall off naturally. I ain't got to do shit. You don't have to do. Once you are in line and you understand the universe, you understand the hermetic laws. You understand what conjuring is. It's an attitude of you. Once you understand it, you ain't got to do shit but do what the fuck you need to do. The thing that stops you from doing what you need to do is trying to do what you want to do. But I've said that many times before. It takes a lot more discipline to do what the fuck you want than to do what the fuck you can. It takes a lot more discipline to do what you truly want and desire versus doing what you can. My mindset before and thinking I was doing what I wanted and doing me was only based on predestination. It was easy for me to say I was doing what I wanted, but I was only doing what I can because I had the job. I had an anchor to keep me comfortable. But once I willingly removed the anchor, I became uncomfortable. Uncomfortable as fuck. The examples that happened in my life to make me uncomfortable were the aspects of the experience that I had to go through. 5 years ago, I didn't have a place. I was homeless. 5 years ago, I was homeless. No, it'd be 6 years now. I was homeless. Didn't have nowhere to go. I had no choice. I had every choice. Either I was going to sit there and cry, or I was going to walk around and get some sun. I was going to walk around, find out what I needed to do inside the space. I was only going to do one or two things. If I stayed there in that space, then I was sitting there like, nigga, I'm homeless. I ain't got nowhere to go. I ain't got no worth. I ain't got no doubt. And I was stuck in projecting my attachments. I never would have got to the job. It was because I was putting in work. It was because I was open. It's because I was allowing that space to make me vulnerable that I was able to get into my last job. My story changed. My story literally, I took my story and I didn't use the narrative of being because when I went to my last job, real story about my last job. When I went in there, I didn't tell the motherfuckers I was homeless. When I went into that space, it wasn't based on projecting, based on saying when I'm homeless, I ain't got no place to stay. They were already told that shit. I was on hard times from my boss. When I went into the position, I sold myself as, yo, this is what I am. From what my old boss told you, when I come into a position, I eradicate shit. I'm paraphrasing it now. I eradicate shit. When I come into a position, I expose shit. I was in my God light. I was in God mode. Fuck everything else. I was in God mode. So when I went into that position, I was like, yo, I eradicate shit. I expose things. My work ethic is this, this, and this. And it was not based on me trying to fill up the space to try to sell some shit. I was already in the position. It was up to me to define how I was going to live it, how I was going to move in that position. When I went into that position, everything that I spoke, I did. Everything that I spoke, I did. Period. Everything that I did. I remember the first time we had a truck. I ain't know where shit was. I'm new. There was 3 niggas outside, standing outside. They're rolling in the truck. We got a dry storage area, the freezer, then we got the cooler. By the time they came in with the last stuff from the fucking freezer, for the freezer aspects of our truck, I already had dry storage put away, organized. I was in the cooler, reorganizing the cooler, labeling everything, doing what I already knew how to do in that space. I was already there. I was already there mentally. I was just bringing it to the physical. I remember we were done with the truck, and I'm sitting there talking to my boss, and he looking at me, he was like, you did a lot of shit that we've been trying to make them do. I said, you can't make nobody. And the first words that I said to that man was like, you can't make somebody do nothing. You can't make nobody do anything. They're going to do what they're going to do regardless based on their level of comfort. That man looked at me, was like, oh shit. I was dangerous. I'm still dangerous. That's the mindset you're going to carry. You're going to become dangerous. Let me read this real quick. You want to replace the window frame. You can't duct tape the window leak. You want to replace the window yourself. You can pay a stranger. Who got? Exactly. That's the mindset you got to be in. This is ownership. This is LLC mentality. You can't say you are an owner. You can't say that you're a god. You can say you're a god, you're a god. You can say whatever the fuck you can say whatever the fuck you want. But until you own up to everything that's going to come up into that space, you're really not doing nothing. You're always going to be in this state of wishful thinking. You're always going to be projecting yourself as something that you are not yet. You ain't got no foundation built into that space. So that's why you start refraining or going back into your old self. My old self don't exist. Dead. Gone. The identities that I used, they no longer exist. The identities that I was so safe in, they no longer exist. The intensity your intensity, your energy dissipates and is now dwindled through these filters. So where you think in your life that you're maintaining your realness, you're not. You're only prolonging the death that you need to go through. Everything in that space need to die. Let it die. Half of the shit in that space already dead. That's why you exist there. That's the dead laying with the dead. You want to keep going back into dead situations. Friend, family, job, they dead. They only serve the purpose up to a point based on your identity. Your identity is now changed. That identity is now in question. That identity is now being challenged. Either you accept the challenge or you don't. What you going to do? Accept the challenge or not? When I started accepting the challenges, I started breaking cycles. When you start accepting the lessons that are about to be learned and open to the lesson, that vulnerability, you start doing the work. You stop avoiding shit. You stop making the excuses. Or you stop living through the excuses. You stop projecting shit. You actually start making that plan for yourself. You actually start like, nigga, this year is nothing but this. So the next year, my man Derek Gray said that shit all the time. Do you want to ball for a summer or you want to ball for a lifetime? The work that I do heals generations. As me becoming the example to the past generation and me becoming the example to the future generation. That's your mindset. That's your inheritance. You got to, even in that space, you got to accept your inheritance. What did you inherit from your mother? What did you inherit from your father? What did you inherit from the mother figure? And what did you inherit from the father figure in your life? You got to accept that shit. Or else you're going to keep the things that you do not accept that you inherited are going to be the things that are going to keep triggering your ass. You mad because your mother is always out eating. She ain't never at the house saving any money. But in the same exact respect, look at yourself. Are you saving money? Are you cooking at the house? Or what are you doing at your house? You mad and upset. And you keep having the same conversation with your homegirl and your homeboy because every 6 months they got a new chick because they ain't learned how to love themselves, and you keep trying to give them the same exact fucking conversation. What about that conversation with yourself? You want to keep the identity of being the good friend when in reality you're just an enabler. I would have to remove myself from the identity of trying to be the homeboy, the brother, the good brother. I had to remove myself from that aspect because that was the shit that was holding me back. Me trying to be the brother, the savior, the once for my people. That was the shit that was holding me back. I was in wishful thinking. I'm living through their traumas. I'm living through their events in their lives. Because I'm not going through that shit anymore. I'm not going through that shit directly. I'm not going through it indirectly. Because I need that in my life to say, this is why I have this. So if that's not present in my life, I don't know what to do. Projection. Using their projections to keep my life, to keep me where I'm at. And to keep me in a wishful state. They ain't got their life. They staying in a 1-bedroom. They ain't even got their own place. They staying in they got a room in somebody else's spot, and they trying to get their life together. And I'm feeding or projecting through this space. Yo, I'm trying to do the same shit. Meanwhile, I'm not learning how to maintain the space that I'm in. How the hell am I going to convert this energy if I'm not maintaining the space that I'm in? How can I maximize and grow if I can't maximize the minimal aspect that I'm in right now? I got to mature my shit. I got to mature my energy. A lot of the times you ain't getting the shit that you want or you desire because you ain't matured your energy. You still acting through the emotional trauma or the emotional aspect of yourself that you ain't dealt with yet. That's why I keep coming up. That's why you feeling lost. That's why you sitting there like, oh my God, like, but I just no. You ain't gonna get it, you ain't gonna get it that way no more. Avoid it all you want. You can avoid that shit all you want, but it ain't gonna do nothing. Keep avoiding it. Watch what happens. The state of avoidance, the state of lack, the state of neglect, the state of insecurity, all these emotional wounds, they're always going to have you sitting there in competition with everything around you. You in a silent competition with motherfuckers. Why? There's nobody in my lane. I've developed this lane. There's nobody in my lane. There's nobody going. I've not seen anybody, and I'm not looking at anybody going into the depth of the shadow work and understanding the internal aspects of yourself as I am. Because that's not my purpose. They got their lane. I got my lane. The goal is for us to, if we have the same intent to groom, grow, become examples and advance, then we high-fiving each other all the way up the fucking, we high-fiving each other up the fucking drag strip. It's only when you want to sit here and debate what you've regurgitated to avoid yourself. You want to debate your energy. You want to argue because you got used to arguing. I don't want to argue. I just want to make this shit dance. What do you really want to do? What do you really need to deal with? Those are the questions that you ask yourself. What do you really need to deal with? What do you really need to accept? This is in a shadow work consultation with me. These are the questions that we are going to expound upon. What do you really need to accept? What layers do we need to work on that you need to start accepting? What do you need to forgive? What do you need to release? What are you going to learn? What lessons are you avoiding? Where are you going to start those lessons that you are avoiding? When are we going to start initiating this healing process? And where are you going to find that help? When are you going to realize that everything outside of you is helping you based on you understanding that it's there to help you? It will harm you if you say that it's going to harm you. It will help you if you say that it's going to help you. You got to make that decision. Once you make that decision, you remove those biases. Therefore, you looking at the things that used to help you, they were actually what helped your old self is harming your new self. You didn't had a crutch in your life for 12 years. As an example, you didn't had a crutch in your life for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 years. You're used to having crutches in your life or enablers in your life. And you calling those relationships. They're not relationships. They're trauma bonds. They're situations. They're side items. They're side chicks. They're side niggas. You know what? Matter of fact, that's what it is. Until you get the relationship until you get the relationship in order with yourself, everybody that comes into your life will be a side chick or a side nigga. That means everything in your life that is making you feel good but not making you get better is a side nigga or a side chick. Got to change the mentality. Got to change the narrative. So now that I use that, now that I take that aspect of that definition, and instead of me saying that's why niggas can't get ahead and bitches can't get ahead and relationships is dead, let me take it in and use it. Let me feed off of it. What's a side nigga? What's a side chick? Everybody that I called a brother at a point in time was a side nigga. They made me feel better. They made me feel good about myself. But when it came to making me feel good about myself, they couldn't provide that energy. So they were side niggas. Every chick that came into my life that made me feel good about myself, but could not aptitude to make me feel better or help me advance or enhance or challenge me, they were side chicks. So my sisters, my brothers, my family members that were related to me based on trauma, they were side niggas and side chicks. They acted accordingly. They acted according to the script that I wrote for myself. They acted according to the story that I was playing out. But now, you change that narrative. You want to call the white man the devil and they're evil and all that good shit? That's nice. That's your child. That's your child. They're only acting based on the development of behavior. They are the byproduct. They're the byproduct of you not mastering your own emotions. They're the byproduct of you not mastering your own emotions. You mad at a cop because you don't understand his historical purpose. I know a cop's historical purpose. They're there to protect intellectual property. That's their whole job. Intellectual property, or the stuff that's based in the mind. They're built to maintain the old mindset. That's what they are. That's why every time you see a black person get shot on the fucking news, they always dehumanize them and take them down to the behavioral aspect. And they do the same thing to the white person. They break them down to their behavioral aspects. The shit that you accepted. Every time they kill a nigga on TV, and they give you the aspects of their identity, the behavior. They're telling you they're doing what they're supposed to do. Every time they kill off a nigga and they dehumanize them and they give you the behavioral aspects and you feel emotionally attached to it, they're letting you know, hey nigga, you need to kill off these emotional aspects. We can't touch you if you kill off these emotions, if you get these aspects in order. We can't kill you if you take ownership of your emotional aspects. But you want to get emotional and make a martyr complex. They dehumanize you because you ain't human. You said you was a god, but the moment that they dehumanize a nigga, you want to be human again. Because you still human. You ain't dealt with that part yet. You ain't dealt with those aspects yet. It's okay. It's okay. You can continue to be attached or you can continue to evolve. You only got one or two choices. You want to come back here with baby brain? By all means, you can do that. Me, I'm not coming back here again. Everything that I'm doing now is to ensure that I don't come back here again. Everything that I speak on is making sure that I don't come back here again. When I transition, when I leave, when I go back to my space, when I go back to my original space and build, this is what's going to be left out here. This will be the intellectual property. This will be the intellectual property that will challenge the behaviors, because you're just going back through yourself. This will be part of the intellectual behavior that will challenge all of the intellectual behaviors in this space. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing it for. When you divert from it, I was watching a Bobby Hemming lecture today, and it was crazy because he was talking about rituals of dehumanizing niggas and making niggas dehumanize before they send them niggas off. And it made me automatically think about the DMX thing. If I'm not honoring my thoughts, if I'm not building anything, if I'm not honoring what I say that I am, that's when the spirit's going to leave my ass. The longer that you stay in the position the longer that you stay in that old ass position of yourself, the more and more you're going to start feeling weaker and weaker and weaker. You keep saying your friends need therapy. You keep saying your friends need healing and therapy. But have you become the example of what healing and therapy looks like? No. Because you keep dehumanizing, because you keep going back into the state of humanization and patting them on the back, telling them it's okay. When I stopped doing that aspect of myself, everything changed. Everything evolved and came into the next space. Now my mindset is based on the works that I've done inside of myself and becoming said example. Now when I see emotional wounds and I see these aspects from my space and my purpose as a healer, I can provide that said service for that space. Now they have to reciprocate and come to this level. They can't come to a level that you haven't created yet. They can't do things that you haven't owned up to yet. They gonna keep doing exactly what they doing. And you gonna keep going back into that space with them, be like, but it's gonna be okay. Because you ain't providing the separation that is needed for them to go in. You're not providing the separation that is needed for yourself. So of course you're not providing the separation that's needed for them. Echoes. Echoes. That's all that they provide. They're echoes. They're echoes of your identity. They're echoes of your identity. You sitting there mad because they about to do a vaccine and shit. Shit ain't got shit to do with me. I only wear a mask. I only wear my breathing. Where my mask at? That's what weird. I don't feel like going to get it. I only wear my mask when I'm at the gym during my fucking. I only wear my mask at the gym when I'm doing my training, when I'm doing my physical training. Other than that, my mask is in my pocket because I'm not going to argue with a motherfucker. But most of the places I go to, I don't have to wear a mask. They're not going to say anything to me because I already defined that inside of my mind. But if they say something to me, I'll be like, all right, cool, I'll put it on. I'm not going to argue with them. That's the rules inside of their space. I haven't created that space for myself yet. So why the fuck am I going to argue with them? Once you stop projecting and you start really opening yourself up, you can learn. But as long as you're stuck in that emotional projection, you're always going to demonstrate when you get angry, it's only fear. When you get sad, it's only fear. When you upset, when you frustrated, it's only fear. And then you were going to project through that said fear. And then you're going to say shit and then try to pull it back. No, I didn't mean to say that. You said it. You got to accept what you said. You got to accept what you did. You're a creator, remember? You're the owner, remember? You're the creator, remember? That's what you are. Own your shit. Stop avoiding the lesson that you need to learn. Stop avoiding shit. Stop avoiding the lesson that you need to learn. One thing that I had to learn from myself, and I really had to, one thing about this work and you learning for yourself is it's going to cause the natural separation that is needed. Everything that needs to happen is going to happen naturally. Once you understand your purpose and once you understand the amplitude of the laws and the mythos and all the information that you take in and you actually start taking it in, you understand that once you accept that you are in the position and everything works for you, that's the precursor. That book that you want to read, that's your precursor. What are you about to do with it? The relationship that you in, friendship that you holding onto, it's a precursor. What you about to do with it? What is it teaching you? What is it showing you? It's only going to trigger everything aspect about you that you ain't dealt with yet. That's all it's doing. And then from there, you got a choice. Am I going to deal with these things or am I not going to deal with these things? If you ain't going to deal with them, then guess what? You're going to avoid it. It's only when you deal with it, when you stop avoiding it, it's bringing it to the surface. What you about to do with it? How you going to work it? What you going to do with that information? You going to sit there and be mad at motherfuckers all the goddamn time? Or you really going to sit there and do some fucking work? You going to stop blaming shit on people? Nothing but opportunity. Ain't nothing but opportunity going forward. What you going to do with the opportunity? The thing that you think is stabbing you in your back and ending you and keeping you from moving, if you notice, you're the one that's holding all that. You're the one that's holding all the fucking cards. You're holding all the swords. You're the one that decides to hold the blade in your back instead of using that blade to cut yourself away from your attachments. As long as you stay in that state of attachment, you're going to be sitting there doing this all the goddamn time. Through the aspect of that Nine of Wands illustrated. You're going to sit here and do this all the time. Why me? Why do I got to go through this? Why ain't anybody else going through this? Because it ain't their path. Until you accept your path, you always going to be in this state of trying to balance everything out. If I hold on to this and I hold on to this, I can walk this line. Break the damn line. Break the goddamn tether. You want to feel good all the time. You want to feel good about yourself. You like the way they make you feel. They make you feel good, but they ain't making you better. They made you feel good for years. They ain't made you better yet. They ain't they're not challenged. They're challenging you, but you ain't accepting the challenge. The dead situations in your life, you keep going back to them, trying to breathe life into them so you can maintain their identity. The space and opportunity to cut shit out. In order for you to cut and move forward, you got to realize it's a double-edged sword. As you cut things away, as you cut and move forward, you cut things away. You got to accept that shit. Your works. You wanna apply to the higher aspects of yourself. You gotta go into the higher realms. This is that guild card. The three of Pentacles represents the very guild that you need to come into. I'm feeling for the ones that are gonna look. You watching now, and the ones that are gonna watch this video. It's time for you to come into that guild. It's time for you to come into that lessons. This card lets me know that it's time for you to come in and get that. It's time for you to get that consultation. I'm gonna say it like that. It's time for you to get that consultation. It's time for you to deal with those underlying issues. Because that's the only way you're going to come into this wealth. Everything going to fall apart. You falling under your own weight. It's time for you to sit on that and own that shit. That's where your energy is. That's the true face of spirituality. That's the true face of you actually taking ownership. This is your time. This is your purpose. What you going to do with it? It's your world. What are you about to do? I could pull all day and illustrate. It's the end of you holding on to these damn wounds. It's the end of you holding on to the fucking wounds. It's the end of you avoiding and using the wounds as your state of avoidance. It's time for you to bring that harmony with yourself. It's time for you to face them shadows, those old aspects of yourself. They're the things that are holding you back. It's time for you to own your shit. It's time. What are you about to do? You can continue doing what you're doing. Talk about you advocating and you protesting and you marching for shit, but it's really not doing anything. All you're doing is avoiding your shadow. Every time that you buy into a protest, buy into the vaccine, buy into this bullshit, all you're doing is avoiding your shadow. That's all you're doing. Every time you buy into the white man's the devil and Asian fuck Asians and all this shit, all you're doing is avoiding your shadow. Every time somebody says, yo, all I need is an idea. Yo, how are we going to build on that? And you keep avoiding and talking about, oh, you must be scared of life and all that shit. All you're doing is avoiding your fucking shadow. Every time you sitting there in that space with that crutch that's enabling you, that keeps giving you the reasons of the shit and telling you that you need to work on yourself. And then you automatically want to react. You need to work on yourself too. You need to look at yourself too. Accept what they're saying so you can, once you accept it and become the example, they have a choice. Either they're going to follow suit or they're naturally going to fall away. But you fighting the process. It's time for you to grow. It's time for that. It's time for you to end this wishful thinking and actually start doing some fucking work. I desire one thing, and that's for you to be the best. I desire you to be the best, step out of these limitations, take this ownership so you can start doing this work. Until you start doing that internal work, until you get that inner child in line, until you start having that conversation with yourself, everything that you do is going to be in the wind. It's going to last as long as you angry. It's going to last as long as you in grief. It's going to last as long as you feeling guilty. That's as long as it's going to last, as long as you're projecting. It's time to get vulnerable with yourself. It's time to get open with yourself. It's time to really sit there with yourself and have that conversation. And that's what Papa Lucifer provides. Services from readings, consultation, set up that Saturday work consultation, so we can start doing that inner child healing, start getting that work done. That's why you're here. That's why I'm here. I'm fulfilling my purpose. I'm fulfilling my prophecies. I'm fulfilling what I need to do. What about you? What about you? I want you to be the best. I desire you to be the best. If you didn't tune into the God Hour podcast, I'm going to end it with that. You didn't tune into the God Hour podcast, this week's episode, we got into anchors or archons, understanding those emotional attachments and breaking those emotional attachments and stepping into ourselves. Stepping into yourself, building into yourself. Until you get that relationship with you in order, everything outside of you gonna be a distraction. You got one or two choices: evolve or come back here with baby brain. And as always, I love you. We love us. Ashe.